following video is reposted on all my social media channels as a public service and in defiance of big tech, deep state censorship. You can do your part to defeat the Orwellian Nazi cabal by sharing and reposting this video on your channel. All of Rudy Giuliani's podcasts are riveting, but the following two are exceptional. All of these facts, if they were presented to a reasonable and impartial jury, would result in the criminals named herein being convicted, without a doubt. This raises the question in my mind as to why these facts need to be presented here on social media. Is there a method to his madness? Is it because he knows this shit will never make it into a deep state courtroom? Who knows? What I can tell you is that there is a common thread that ties all of this corruption together and keeps these criminals from being sent to the gallows for treason and the worst crimes against humanity conceivable. Crimes that are so evil and twisted that even those who read stories about babies being born with wooden legs in the National Enquirer would have trouble believing what is right in front of their eyes. That is how they get away with this shit. This phenomena is nothing new. All it is recently discovered. Only in that sense is it new. We here on social media exposed it, and now they're trying to erase all traces of it by censoring content and penalizing those of us who created that content. This is in gross violation of Title 18 U.S. Code 241 and 242, the RICO Act, and other laws governing monopolies, all done by a few government-entangled corporations. What it all boils down to is simply this. If you want your country back, if you want true freedom for your children and future generations, sooner or later you will be forced to pick up a weapon and fight, or lie down and succumb to the techno-Nazi dictatorship that has been banging at the door for many, many generations.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought us to the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained by rational principles the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the powerful Kingdom of England and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and he explained it in ways that were understandable to the people, to all of the people. A great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we are able to reason, we're able to talk to each other, we're able to listen to each other, and we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back again with another edition of Rudy's Common Sense. Today, our subject is going to be maybe a surprising one. So I'll kind of approach it a little slowly. So this Black Lives Matter movement, when you hear it, please don't think it's about black lives. It's about an infinitesimal proportion of black lives. The ones that are in some way involved with the police. Not the 800,000 or 900,000, the 8 or 9,000 per year that are killed by citizens, 90% of which are other black people. No, but they don't care about that. Nor do they care about the 1-year-old child who was killed in Chicago, in New York this weekend, or the 13 that were killed in Chicago, many of whom were black, or gosh, I could take you to Philadelphia or St. Louis or Minneapolis, and we could talk about the same thing, and we could talk about Black Lives Matter's total lack of care. But they have an agenda. Their agenda is to change, ultimately destroy, the government of the United States the way it presently is constituted. They want a totally different kind of government that is on a socialist communist model and that gives preference to people of one race. That's about the best way you could describe it. Interesting. This agenda goes back to 2016, 2017. That's when George Soros set out on his own agenda. His own agenda was exactly the same as Black Lives Matter, but he wanted to focus on the criminal justice system and destroy it. Basically make it into an anarchist system in a similar way to Black Lives Matter, with the same platform. You could say it was accidental, but it's alleged that George Soros substantially supports Black Lives Matter with money. He certainly supports them by having the same agenda and puts money behind that agenda. He has an agenda for doing away with drug crimes. He has an agenda to empty out the jails. He has an agenda to end money bail. He has an agenda to defund police departments. He has an agenda to not enforce quality of life crimes, including lower level property crimes. Very similar to their agenda. And they support it through protests that turn into riots, sometimes through violence. He supports it by contributing huge amounts of money, like, I don't know, over the years, 25, 30 million in a short period of time, since 2015, 2016. And he puts the money into places where there generally wasn't the expenditure of a great deal of money. District attorneys' races. District attorneys in most of the country, the people who prosecute crime, are elected. They're not appointed like the U.S. attorneys are by the president, which has always been a matter of some concern because there's a fear that it would politicize it. And in many of these states, they'd become even nonpartisan races. In other words, not Republican, Democrat. And rarely do district attorneys' races involve the political distinctions that occur between the two parties. They're generally based on, actually, they used to be based on who was tougher on crime. He turned them into trying to elect the people who were the softest on crime, very often not former prosecutors, very often either criminal defense lawyers or civil rights lawyers who believe that the criminal justice system has to be, changed into a prosecute very few people and let everybody out of jail system. Really, that's the kind of people he supported. He didn't just do it once, though. He's been supporting them. He's been supporting them for years now, and that support has done a pretty good job at deteriorating the criminal justice system. In fact, in a lot of the cities where you see this tremendous increase in murder, those cities have the benefit of George Soros paid for and produced district attorneys who basically don't prosecute people. I'm serious. They don't prosecute people. And therefore, it is quite obvious that there's going to be crime problems. Another one of the strange cases is the one in St. Louis involving the McCluskeys, Mark and Patricia McCluskey, 63 and 61. Two lawyers who look like they made it the hard way, worked hard, relatively poor, worked their way through law school, have developed a really very, very successful law practice. They, as far as I know, they were basic supporters of the protest movement. Like all of us, found the killing of Mr. Floyd outrageous and believe justice has to happen and some changes have to take place. But also, apparently, don't agree with riots, because by the time they reached their house, the Black Lives Matter had turned this into a riot, and they broke down the gates, came in, and threatened them with killing their dog, threatened them with taking over their house, threatened them about how they were going to enjoy their bedroom. And Mark and Patricia went inside, and he took out an AR-15, and she took out a pistol, and they stood there. I mean, definitely outnumbered, but still protecting their house, protecting what they call in Missouri their castle. There's a castle doctrine that allows you to protect your house. There's also a stand your ground law, which allows you to protect yourself. They were doing both. All of a sudden, the district attorney, when this is over, district attorney named Kimberly Gardner, decides that she's thinking about prosecuting them. She's going to prosecute them, I don't know for what. I guess attempted murder or threats or violation of civil rights, like interfering in a riot. I don't know what she's going to prosecute them for. I don't think it much matters because I think she's going to prosecute them because she's a biased, prejudiced tool of Black Lives Matter. Oh, maybe not. No. I mean, you know who funded her campaign, right? You know she's also been given to us by Soros. He's a major funder of her campaign. She ran on a destroy the criminal justice system platform, which all of his people do, and now she's going to do it. Bought and paid for by George Soros, who is really interested in protecting St. Louis. Or is he really interested in destroying the United States, piece by piece? Because it isn't, I mean, we've talked about St. Louis, Contra Costa, California, and Chicago, where he's made infiltrations. But he's done this all over the country. This isn't just those three places. He's been doing this for quite some time. This would be a good time to take a short break. Thank you for coming back. But let me just give you a little rundown of them. I can't go over all of them, but I go over some of the most significant ones. In 2017, he supported a candidate for DA in Philadelphia who really is a clown, a complete clown, a guy named Krasner. Krasner has become the DA there, and the police are basically in full-out revolt because he won't prosecute what he considers to be small property crimes. Now, small property crimes can be 500, 1,000, 1,500. By the way, when you don't prosecute the small property crimes, those people who do it start doing bigger property crimes. It's called the broken windows theory, which they also oppose and want to do away with. Black Lives Matter and Soros, same agenda. They both want to do away with bail, right out of the Black Lives Matter handbook. They want to let people out of prison, Black Lives Matter playbook. George Soros is funding this Marxist, terrorist-inspired document. The Marxists are the three people who founded this thing, and the terrorist is Susan Rosenberg, who raises money for them, who should be in jail, who got a 58-year sentence for being involved in an organization named Black Panthers, who used to kill police officers. That's what this is all about, Black Lives Matter. That's why I don't see how you can prosecute somebody for wanting to remove it from the streets of their city. I don't want a group that hates white people, that hates America, that wants to destroy our system of government, that has been organized by Marxists and funded by terrorists. I don't want that seen by my children. And the DA there, Becton, Soros paid for DA, wants to prosecute the people, or is prosecuting the people, who did it for a hate crime. This is a hate crime. Black Lives Matter. It's dedicated to hate. Read what they write. Don't listen to the corrupt media that covers up for them. Read what they write and look at what they do. And the guy putting the money behind it is George Soros. He denies it. But this is too much of a coincidence that he's putting in these DAs that want to undercut the criminal justice system and the police that have exactly the same agenda as Black Lives Matter. And he's putting millions and millions behind it. In Philadelphia, he gets this loser DA elected named Krasner, and he put $1.7 million into the race. That's a heck of a contribution to the DA's race. These used to be virtually uncontested races or contested based on who has the most experience or the best ethical background. And as one group there that was like a good government group that picks DAs says, when he comes in, it starts to feel like Philadelphians lose control of our city to Soros, and they don't know why is Soros doing it. Well, he's doing it so they can have their agents all over America executing the Black Lives Matter agenda, which is to do away with the police and ultimately to do away with our system of owning property. Okay, we have Philadelphia. We got Krasner there. And, oh, by the way, we got property crime going through the roof there. So Soros' gift to Philadelphia is that people are getting their stuff stolen left and right. Thanks, George. Very helpful. And almost all these cities, by the way. Look at Chicago. We'll talk about that in a minute. But think about Chicago. Just keep thinking about Chicago. So here we have in 2018, this is the one with Becton. He gets his friend Diana Becton. He put $49,646. That was just one contribution. And she wins, virtually no qualifications for the job. And she's the one who is going to prosecute the people for hate crime, just in trying to wipe out Black Lives Matter. I don't know. What about all the people? What about all the people that do all the crazy painting on walls and stuff like that? The graffiti people. They don't prosecute them anymore. My city, I got rid of all the graffiti in my city, all of it. I drove around last night in Brooklyn. It's all back again, thanks to de Blasio. You don't prosecute those people for vandalizing people's houses and factories and buildings, and you prosecute these people for just wanting to get rid of a sign that represents a Marxist hate group that hates America? I don't know. Maybe they should just be told not to do it, or maybe they should be given an award for doing it. Oh my goodness! And then we got another one here, and this one is San Diego District Attorney race, where he put in $1.5 million to elect in this case a again an unqualified candidate to run against the district attorney there. Then he put in another $402,000 in the race in San Diego, and he had that was twice as much as the public defender's race had raised. So we have him in California. Then we had him in Monroe County, New York, little Monroe County, New York, and he's supporting a candidate named Sherry Curry Mitchell. He put in $810,000 in little Monroe County, and what she wanted was expansive cutbacks in use of cash bail, Black Lives Matter, and legalization or decriminalization of marijuana, Black Lives Matter. Then he won 2 elections in Virginia in 2019, in little counties in Virginia, which there'd be no reason for him to have any possible involvement other than they ran on the same platform of deconstruct the criminal justice system. And then he is now engaged in a real big one. What he's doing in this one is he's going to go up against the District Attorney of Los Angeles. The District Attorney of Los Angeles, the incumbent District Attorney, is named Jackie Lacey. She is, I believe, the first African American or black woman, whichever you prefer, as the way to say it, first black woman District Attorney in Los Angeles County. And by all reports, is a good, balanced district attorney. And there was a U.S. district attorney in San Francisco named George Gascon. George Gascon is a progressive. He believes in no cash bail. He believes in not prosecuting property crimes. He believes in letting people out of jail if they've gotten too high a sentence. He's basically a pro-criminal district attorney, which really means you don't need a defense lawyer anymore because the district attorney will defend you. Kind of ruins the system, but I'll tell you what else it does. So since he became district attorney in San Francisco, San Francisco has the highest property crime rate in the nation. I didn't say they had an increase in their property crime. I said they have the highest property crime rate in the nation. So Gascon got thrown out of office. Even the mayor of San Francisco and the city attorney of San Francisco wanted him out. So now Soros is taking his puppet from San Francisco, where he ruined San Francisco with his high property crime, and he's bringing it down to Los Angeles, which until the violent crime started with the Black Lives Matter protests that turned into riots, was actually doing a lot better than San Francisco. Not doing as well now, but still doing pretty well on property crime compared to San Francisco. So he's bringing Gascon, and he's going to run Gascon against Jackie Lacey, who looked like she was going to be unopposed because nothing wrong with her. And right now, Gascon's ahead in the polls because this guy has given him a fortune. So he can do to L.A. what he did to San Francisco, which is make it the highest property crime place in the country. Am I missing something here? What's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with Soros? Why would you run a failed district attorney who made his city more dangerous against what appears to be a good district attorney who's also black? Because actually, in the long run, it's not even about Black Lives Matter or blacks or whites. It's about getting control of our government. It's a Marxist agenda. It's an anarchist agenda to try to get control of our government, to make us hate our government, to find ways that they alienate us from our government. And Soros is a very material part of it. This would be a good time to take a break. Thank you for joining us again. I've only covered a few of the DA's races that he's involved himself in each case putting in a subversive district attorney. In many cases, without any regard to the people of that city, because people of that city are suffering mightily from the crimes that are now taking place that would not take place if you had a competent district attorney. Because for the police to be effective, you need a competent police department, and you need a competent district attorney, and you need a competent mayor. That's how you bring crime down. That's how I did it. I didn't do it by myself. I did it with 2 good U.S. attorneys and 5 good district attorneys. And I was heavily involved in making sure that at least district attorneys were properly funded. And none of them were idiots like this. None of them were pro-criminal district attorneys. They were fair. Some of them were legendary, like Bob Morgenthau. They were fair, but they weren't, let the criminals out of prison district attorneys. We have defense lawyers to keep people out of prison. Prosecutors are supposed to put people in prison who endanger the public. And when they don't, we have 63 shootings, like in Chicago. Or we have a 1-year-old child killed in New York. And then another 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 shootings. We're again having days in which 12 hours in a row, shooting, all over New York. This is not, please, understand this. This is not isolated. This is not spontaneous. This is planned. This is planned by Black Lives Matter. It's funded by Soros to the tune of $30 or $40 million. And the plan is to change your government, to take it away from you. To take away from you a government based on free enterprise. To take away from you your Second Amendment right to bear arms. To take away from you really your right to have a religion. Soros is a notorious atheist. Proclaims the fact that he's an atheist. So are Marxists, by the way. It's one of the cores of Marxism is atheism. And one of the cores of Marxism is no private property. They want your property. They want the government to control it. But they do want one preferred class, and that's the people who are they're going to get like a lifetime salary. And that's going to be black people will get that. And they'll also get to choose property that they want, and that's the reparations for slavery. Except it'll include black people that came from the Caribbean, and it's going to get paid by white people who never had anything to do with slavery, ever. I mean, for example, my family came to America the latter part of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th, after the Civil War. And they came when Italians were the second largest group of people being lynched in America, right behind blacks. So I don't know why people who came here after slavery was over, I don't know why they would pay, what are they paying reparations for? They didn't do anything. Their family did anything. Finally, why would somebody pay for what their family did 150, 160, 170 years ago? Don't we sort of have a concept, this isn't a legal concept, it's more like a Western civilization moral concept. That we don't blame the son, we say son, it would be daughter, for the sins of the father? Huh? Isn't that sort of a basic sense of fairness in Western civilization? Well, they hate our civilization. They hate it. They find everything wrong with it, and they hate our country. And that's why they tear down monuments and burn flags and kneel when national. It's all part of getting as many people to hate America. They undermine our educational system with this 619 program. We'll do more on this. I want you to see that what you're facing is a planned, pretty well thought out 3, 4, 5 years ago, movement to get rid of the police, get rid of the government the way we know it, to get rid of the rights that we have, like our right to private property, and to replace it with something much closer to communism, Marxism, socialism. It's all there. Take the time to read about it, and don't be propagandized by NBC, CBS, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. I left a few of the other beauties out. I don't know if they don't bother to read. I don't know that if they hate Trump so much they'll accept only anything. Or I don't know that they've come to hate their country too. I just don't know. But that's what they do. They try to get you to hate the country. And they haven't succeeded yet. But they're making a darn heck of a try for it in this election. This election could be a turning point. Because Joe Biden embraces this. Well, Joe Biden embraces anything they bring him because he doesn't know what he's doing. He would, first of all, I don't know even when he was Compass Menace, if he wouldn't have just gone along, because he basically was an empty suit that would go along with anything. But now he's not Compass Menace. You know that. So this is a very, very important election. We have got to get together. We have to be together to preserve the American way of life. George Soros, Black Lives Matter, and the left wing are trying to rip it away from us. And I'll be darned if they're going to get it. This is too beautiful a country. It has done too many great things, even with its sins and faults, to have these people tear down its reputation, burn its flag, and destroy it. Not going to happen. And we're going to pray to God because we need the strength to stand up to them. And we need the strength to defend the people that are being persecuted by them, like people in St. Louis, like the people in Contra Costa who stand up. We got to be there for them. So thank you very much, and we'll be back in a few days with another segment of Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense. Thank you. Welcome to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense. And today we have a very special guest on a very special day. John Solomon, you know, is an award-winning journalist, many, many awards and great breaking news all the time. But John has a book out, which I think is out today for the first time. So we're going to talk to him about the book and about a lot of other things. John, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, it's so good to join you. Thank you for having me today. It is true. My new book is out with Seamus Bruner, my co-author.
The name is?
Called Fallout: The Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and Washington Lies That Enriched the Clinton and Biden Dynasties. It's a mouthful, but it's quite a yarn, as you probably know.
So this includes, there's a piece of it that you have out today.
I do.
Can you tell us about that, and then we'll go into the rest of it?
Absolutely. On justthenews.com, which is our website, we have an excerpt from the book today, and it tells one of the parts of the Russia scandal that a lot of people forget about or has been glossed over, and that is while the Obama administration, the Obama, Biden, Clinton team was giving away the house to the Russians, giving them the uranium-1 assets under our ground raw uranium in the United States, billions upon billions of contracts of nuclear fuel that made American utilities and their ratepayers dependent on Vladimir Putin for their future nuclear energy. The Russians were secretly helping Iran facilitate their illicit nuclear weapons program. And so the FBI had an undercover figure, a guy named Doug Campbell. He was undercover in Rosatom for 6 or 7 years, feeding the FBI daily information as an informant. And he's providing them all of this real-time information that Russia is assisting the nuclear program. And, hey, why is Barack Obama about to do a deal with Iran and Russia when they're cheating? And the FBI could never get the attention of the president and get him to address this appropriately. But we tell that story. And, really at the end of the day, Fallout is a story of an Obama, Biden, Clinton foreign policy that appeased our enemies, gave away billions of dollars of gifts, whether it's Iran or Russia, China. And at the end of the day, gave away our security with nothing in return for benefit to the American public.
Wasn't that payment that was sent over by airplane? It looked like a drug deal.
Yes, it did. C-130s, as I recall.
That was right at the end, right when they were concluding. And how much money? How much money was that?
It was in the billions. We don't know the exact.
It was in the billions in cash, right?
It was, and here's one of the great things that people don't remember. Right after Iran got that money, you know what they did? They went to Russia and bought a whole bunch of arms. So Russia got rich on the Iran deal. Iran got rich on the Iran deal, and the American public got less secure. That's
so
what
was the purpose of making that? It was money theoretically that we owed. It was money that we had seized.
Right.
At the time of the revolution.
That's right.
And we decided to give it back to them.
We did, because Iran needed cash flow. After all of those incredible tough sanctions that George W. Bush put in place and others, the Iran economy was crumbling, and it didn't have a way to buy weapons, fund terrorism, do the basic things it does for its people. And so part of the appeasements, part of the inducement to sign the nuclear deal was we would give them some cash, and we did, a lot of it. And what did they do?
And why was it done in cash?
Because I don't think they wanted it to be detected originally. Remember, there was originally denials that there was money going to Iran as part of the deal. Eventually, we got the truth on that. But cash made it easily fungible for the Iranians to move it quickly. And that's what we did. We didn't wire it. We actually sent cash.
Do you think there had been other cash payments before that to them?
That's something that I've always looked at. I've not been able to find any evidence of it. There's always been rumors of it. But listen, no matter where you look at it, cash was moving around. Cash is moving from the Russians to the Clinton Foundation. Cash is moving to Bill Clinton's wallet with a $500,000 payment from Moscow. John Podesta gets a major investment from a Russian in his clean energy company where he sits on the board. Cash was moving all around. Hunter Biden gets lots of cash out of Ukraine. All of these events are interconnected. What we really show, and what the ultimate story of Fallout is that we tried to answer the question, why, of all the things that Hillary Clinton could have done to attack Donald Trump, why did she pick Russia and Ukraine? Why those two things? And the answer is it was a cover-up. It was to cover up one of the worst foreign policy failures in American history. And the fact that while that policy was failing, all of these Biden, Clinton, Obama acolytes were cashing in, getting money. So you had corruption and bad foreign policy. And the only loser in this story is the American people.
The uranium-1 deal, do you cover that as well?
We do. We talk a lot about it.
That deal, I've never understood why that wasn't investigated and prosecuted.
Well, in real time, the FBI...
Or any of this investigated and prosecuted, for that matter.
Yeah, you've been saying that for months, and you're right. There's a blind eye to all of this. We have one really big revelation on uranium-1, and that is after we broke the story about Doug Campbell, that there was an informant back in 1718, and the Clinton, Obama, Biden machine started firing nuclear missiles at me. One of the storylines that Democrats and the media gave us was, all right, there was a criminal investigation, but we didn't know about it. We had no reason to block the deal. Well, we called bunk on that. We were able to get a December 2017 email that was once classified notifying Congress that in August of 2010, months before they approved uranium-1 and a year before they started approving all those billions of nuclear fuel contracts for Vladimir Putin, The Obama top echelons of government, the NRC, the Energy Department, the State Department, were all told the company you're dealing with, Rosatom, they have one entity, RMZ, that's buying uranium one. The other entity, 10X, is engaged in bribery, in kickbacks, extortion, and money laundering. And despite that warning, despite the fact that they knew that that was a dirty company, and that they knew that the company was carrying out a mission by Putin to make America dependent on Ukrainian fuel, they gave away the House anyways. Despite that warning, we debunked the Democratic storyline in this book.
Now, what is the what? I've never understood the rationale for letting Russia get uranium one. Why did we make a deal and give them material like that?
Well, it's a great question. We try to answer it. And I think it really comes down to when you go to 30,000 feet, there are two foreign policy approaches in America right now. There's the one that came when you were in the Reagan administration and has continued today through President Trump, which is a peace through strength approach to foreign policy. Right. And then there is the Obama, Biden, Clinton approach, which is peace through appeasement. If we give our enemies lots of gifts, they won't want to attack us. And Vladimir Putin played him like a fiddle because he got everything he wanted. He got uranium under the ground. He got billions of dollars of contracts. Hillary Clinton and the Obama State Department helped them build Skokovo, which is a Moscow version of our Silicon Valley. And after he gets all that, he pulls the carpet out from under us and invades Ukraine. And the Obama, Biden, Clinton people are sitting there going, oh, my God, did we get taken to the farm? And that's what they're trying to cover up in 16 when they hire Christopher Steele. They're trying to neutralize Russia by putting Trump and the Republicans on defensive with false allegations.
I mean, that all of a sudden makes a great deal of sense when you think about how some of these policies seem to be completely unjustified and totally counterproductive.
Yeah, it really does. There's a great moment. There's one document my colleague Seamus Bruner found. I'm so proud that he uncovered this document. I did an interview in 2018. I talked to a Clinton campaign official. I think you and I may have talked about this one time or another, but they said, listen, that Christopher Steele didn't start out to give the information to the FBI. It was just to make the Republicans wary of bringing up Russia during the election. And then it spiraled out of control when he walks it into the FBI and it becomes a scandal. But one of the things we found, there's a poll from July of 2015 that was done internally by Hillary Clinton's campaign. We have a copy of it. It's up on the website. It's embedded in the book. You can see it. And of all the scandals that Hillary Clinton endured in her life, Whitewater, the Rose Law Firm billing records, Vince Foster, the Asia money fundraising scandal, the email scandal that Jim Comey shuts down on July 5th, 2016, the thing more than anything else, the polling data showed was her greatest liability, her greatest impediment to becoming president, was the Clinton cash story that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were cashing in while giving away all these gifts to Russia. That is the poll that sets in motion Christopher Steele and all the events that became the fake scandals against President Trump.
This is an appropriate time to take a short break. Thank you for returning, and let's continue our conversation with John Solomon. So for that uranium decision, she was on CFIUS at the time, right?
Right.
They got a big contribution to the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
He received extraordinary speaking fees, didn't he?
$500,000 from a Moscow bank connected to the nuclear industry.
Right.
Yep.
And the Clinton Foundation, do we know how much they got?
Well, they originally got commitments for, I think, $140 million. Our reporting in the book shows that a lot of that ultimately didn't get delivered even. They didn't even get the money, but they certainly gave away the farm anyways.
Right.
John Podesta, her campaign chairman, he sits on the board of a clean energy company. Now, you know, Russia's in the oil business. They're not into clean energy.
Right.
All of a sudden, they invest in John Podesta's company. Tony Podesta, John's brother, gets a lobbying contract. And then Joe Biden has a very famous energy advisor. His name is Amos Hochstein.
Yes.
If you go back to 15 when the Russia reboot had failed and Ukraine had been invaded with the Crimea invasion by Russia, you'll go back and you'll see all these speeches and testimony before Congress where Amos Hochstein says, we can't let Russia have an energy monopoly. They use energy as a geopolitical weapon. We can't do it. Well, guess what Amos Hochstein was doing in 06, 07, 08, and 09? He was helping Rosatom, the Russia nuclear energy company, get a leg up in America, get the uranium, get the nuclear fuel contracts, put American uranium mining workers out of business and getting paid for it. And then a few years later, without mentioning that history, he suddenly is outraged at Russia and its geopolitical energy strategy. great hypocrisy only could occur in Washington.
John, did you get any information on that very famous interchange between Obama and Medvedev when he said, once the election is over, I can be a lot easier on Vladimir?
Yeah,
or
be a lot more flexible.
A lot more flexible with Vladimir. I mean, that was one of the most extraordinary statements that was certainly a lot more improper and suggestive than anything involving Trump.
Oh, 100%.
I'm going to cave, after the election's over, I'll cave into Russia. I mean, it's ridiculous. What was that about?
One of the great moments about that open mic moment is that it's the ultimate sign of what an appeasement foreign policy, an appeasement national security policy is. Hey, let me get through the election and I'll give away the farm. And they did. And that quote was really symbolic of what was really going on behind the scenes. You've got American utilities that are going to be buying Russian uranium for years to come to fuel our nuclear power plants in America. Now, we know what Vladimir Putin does to control Eastern Europe, right? When he doesn't like something that Ukraine or one of the Eastern Europe, right, he pulls the gas or he raises
energy extortion.
It's extortion.
Right.
Obama, Biden, and Clinton left us potentially in an extorted position on uranium and our nuclear power supply, because what happened once the Russians dumped all their cheap uranium into America, the uranium industry in America, the mining industry in America, essentially went out of business. We don't mine uranium. If Vladimir Putin stopped shipping, we could have a crisis here. And one of the people asked me the other day, well, I know Clinton got a lot of stuff. It's obvious Biden got a lot of stuff. What did Barack Obama get out of this? And here's
what did Barack Obama get? Because obviously he tolerated all this, and he had to know what was going on. I mean, some of it was in the newspapers.
Well, and some of it was in his PDB, as we report.
Of course, I would hope so.
He got an August 2010 briefing on everything that was going on with Rosatom and their criminality in the United States, and he still allowed the Uranium One deal and the nuclear deals to go together. Well, we answer that question. So if you go back earlier in Barack Obama's career when he's a senator for United States Senator from Illinois, he was very close to the utility industry. The big utilities in the country loved him. They donated a lot to his 2008 campaign. Well, one of the winners of the Russia uranium transaction is that American utilities, the Edisons and all those big utilities that power our country, they got a cheaper form of fuel. They got cheaper Russian uranium than they would get from the American workers. So they were able to improve their bottom line. And where did they go after they were done getting those contracts? They dropped $10 million on Barack Obama's foundation in his library. So he walks away with a handsome payout, just like all the other characters in our book.
So let's go back to the Biden allegations, because I've got to ask you something that confounds people, which is with all of these revelations, whether they're the ones involving Biden and Ukraine or the ones involving Hillary and Russia, why do none of them get investigated?
Great question. Well,
when much more tenuous allegations about other people are investigated as if it's the end of the world.
Well, as your good work for the president, as his private lawyer showed, and the reporting I did, and Sarah Carter, and many of the other great reporters that worked on this, Greg Jarrett, Sean Hannity, we saw a complicity between the Justice Department, the FBI, and the news media, right? They were leaking to each other, and sometimes the FBI would take a leak that they knew came from them and use it as affirmation of their evidence. It was circular reporting. Right. Well, that unholy alliance really plays out in the opposite direction. When they don't want to investigate something, the media just turns away and doesn't cover it. And that's really the story of Ukraine. There is a willful, knowing blindness in the American media and in the Justice Department and in the Pompeo State Department not to look at extremely credible, well-documented allegations. But I have good news for you.
Yeah, please.
There's a senator from Wisconsin by the name of Ron Johnson.
Right.
And he's been following your vapor trail into Ukraine. He's got a large staff of investigators. And I believe in the next few weeks, certainly by the fall, Ron Johnson's going to issue a first report, and he's going to validate not only what you and I found, he's going to put a whole new set of allegations and evidence on the table that what went on in Ukraine was not only corrupt, it was bad for American national security.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. I mean, I have more than a few Ukrainian officials that I questioned, and then at the end of it, they would say, you can't imagine what this did for the reputation of your country.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I mean, here Biden is appointed as the point man, and he is supposed to not only get money to them, but kind of fix Russia, which he fails to do. He can't even get them weapons. They're fighting Russia with slingshots rather than weapons. And he is supposed to kind of control the corruption. But of course, then he participates in it and makes a fool out of America.
Yeah, and I think we lived together through the Russia scandal where day by day the most serious allegations went in reverse until they entirely disappeared.
Right.
I think you're already beginning to see that. Remember where we started the Ukraine defense when people were attacking you and me and
right.
Chanel Rion and others? Oh, the State Department had nothing to do with Burisma. Well, guess what? My FOIA lawsuits have found, thanks to the good help of the Southeastern Legal Foundation, the State Department was deeply involved with Burisma. They had a USAID contract with them. When the Burisma was trying to get out of the criminal investigations they were legitimately facing in Ukraine, where did they turn? To the Obama State Department, to the Biden State Department, and we're pressuring them. Help us make these corruption allegations go away. And who was meeting with them? George Kent, one of the famous impeachment witnesses.
Right.
Marie Yovanovitch, the ambassador. The storyline that the Democrats gave us during impeachment is unraveling day by day,
right.
and I expect Ron Johnson to blow an even bigger hole in the side of their ship in the next few weeks.
We'll be back with you momentarily. Thank you for returning to our conversation with John Solomon. Well, I mean, the amazing thing is that Burisma, there is absolutely no question it was a completely crooked company, just by the mere fact that it was formed while Zlochevsky was a minister of government.
Yeah.
And he gave himself all of the lucrative licenses. So he
exactly.
it would be as if the Secretary of Defense had a private company and he gave them all of the contracts to build airplanes and then left and took the benefit of it.
And that's the company that hires Hunter Biden.
And that's the company that hired Hunter Biden and paid him all that money for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, for nothing to get Joe's influence.
That's what it was. It was a protection program. It was like the old mob money that went on the street to protect the shopkeeper who didn't want to be harassed. You just kept paying as long as they paid Hunter Biden. And you see it in the documents we just got in the FOIA lawsuit, Mr. Mayor. You see this line where, hey, the Burisma people and Blue Star want to come meet with the undersecretary of the State Department. And, oh, you better meet with them because Hunter Biden's on the board. It was the ultimate calling card and the ultimate protection card. And yet the American media, the Congress, the State Department, even Mike Pompeo's State Department, they've turned a blind eye to what is a legitimate, honest scandal.
Yeah. I mean, actually, people should know that you began working on it 2.5 years at least before Biden was going to run for president, and I started working on it 2 years before.
That's right.
Completely for another reason, to defend the president.
Right.
And had no idea Biden was involved.
None.
And he was handed to us by the Ukrainians.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the evidence sitting in the American public record.
And the Ukrainians tried very hard to get the information of the Justice Department.
They did.
You made that very clear in columns way back then and recently.
Recently, yes. The former U.S. attorney in Little Rock, Bud Cummins, reached out to Jeff Berman, the man who just got fired as the U.S. attorney in New York, and they turned a deaf ear. And you see time and again this dual system of justice. Tenuous allegations against the president get investigated. Serious allegations against Obama, Biden, Clinton get deep sixed. And I think the ultimate day that will live in infamy for this period is July 5th, 2016, Mr. Mayor, because that's the day that James Comey walks out onto the stage and says, even though he didn't have the authority to do so, I'm not going to charge Hillary Clinton for all of the bad conduct she had on her classified email system. She broke security rules, but you know what? We're not going to charge her. And on that same day, the same day they give a pass to Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele walks into the London FBI and says, here's my dossier. And because of last week, because of the litigation in Britain, what did we learn? He told the FBI on day one, when he drops off the dossier the first time, my ultimate client is Hillary Clinton, the one you just exonerated a few hours ago in Washington. That day is the ultimate symbol of the dual justice system that we've created in America the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, as you know, I hired Jim Comey years ago.
Right.
He was a fine assistant U.S. attorney. I began to become somewhat suspicious of him when he pulled that routine with Ashcroft.
Right.
It seemed to me it was done more for publicity but he made himself into like a saint with the Washington media.
He did.
But I never thought he was as, whatever he is, dishonest or until he put out that report. Because when he did it, he gave all the facts that would make an incredibly strong case of obstruction of justice. He gave all the evidence of intent, destroying 33,000 emails, destroying telephones, bleaching the server, These are the things
Right.
you use to prove intent. He knows that. He prosecuted cases under me. And then he
That's
he
right.
makes the ridiculous statement that no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. And every prosecutor is looking at it and saying, bring this case. I would salivate for a case like that.
Exactly.
She's so obviously guilty. I think he got into a lot of trouble for that. And I think some of the Trump pursuit was to make up for that.
Yeah, I think that
because
makes a lot of sense.
Without realizing it, trying to play both sides against the middle, although he didn't indict her, he did tremendous damage to her.
He did.
I mean, he laid out. I mean, he laid out facts that Trump was able to hammer home very, very dramatically. I mean, I gave the speech at the Republican convention, and the minute I mentioned her name, this was a month after, lock her up, lock her up.
Right.
Then you say 33,000 emails, and they go crazy. Who ever heard of someone destroying 33,000 emails not getting prosecuted?
It's insane. Yep. And remember, they were under subpoena. It's just remarkable. I talk about in the final chapter of this book with my good colleague Seamus Bruner that when I look back at 2009 to 2019, I call it the decade of deceit. It's the first time in our history where institutions that we came to rely on, that they were above politics, they would stick to the facts, they didn't have an agenda, suddenly showed their hands politically. And that's the FBI, the Justice Department, the CIA, and the news media. Yeah, I know Republicans have always had a beef with the news media, but the news media of the last 6-7 years are far more corrupt, far more
I agree
deceitful.
completely. I mean, I thought back when I ran for president and even when I was mayor that they were pretty tough and pretty difficult. It was like a dream compared to now.
Right. Oh,
and,
it
and
is.
even the people who pursued you, you could sometimes turn them around. Sometimes you could explain it to them.
Right.
And,
they were open to
and
facts.
it was more of a game and their job than consumed with this hatred.
That's it.
There's a hatred now that kind of wipes out rationality.
Yeah.
And I think there's also this, Trump is so bad, we can do anything to get him out.
Right.
Even hurt our country tremendously.
Yep. You see it every day in the words that are being uttered on Twitter by journalists. They've abandoned all sense of neutrality, and it's bad for the country, as it is that our FBI and DOJ became politically poisoned, our State Department. They were above politics for a long time, but this episode, this sorry decade, really showed us that they have become politically infiltrated and bad for the future of America unless we hold people accountable and reverse it.
So how much of that is being fixed? If
None
at
of
all?
it yet. None of it. Very little. I mean, I definitely am seeing evidence that John Durham is running a criminal investigation, and I think we will see some activity. But really, most people have gotten a pass. Well, sure, a few people got fired, a couple people got a slap on the hands. But we write in the book that the grave danger is if we do not punish and make this behavior so painful that you won't try it again, that this will become the norm in America. We'll be a banana republic. The FBI will be weaponized to go after whatever enemy we did. What went on in Russia and Ukraine was worse than anything the Nixon enemies list ever envisioned doing back in the 70s.
So, just to conclude it, I'll pick the
Sure.
easiest one of all. I can't imagine as a prosecutor or a U.S. attorney, if I had a case like Comey's submission of the Pfizer affidavits to the court, given all the other evidence surrounding it, that I wouldn't prosecute him for making a false statement, perjury.
Right.
In all likelihood, they're not going to prosecute him. Maybe they will, but probably not. What is that? It's a fear of being attacked by the media. I mean, they're lawyers. They can see the evidence as clearly as I can see it.
That's right.
He has a heading on the top says verified.
Right.
He gives the information. He doesn't indicate that it's not verified. He knows it because a few months later he tells the president it's not verified. So
Right.
we know that he knows it.
That's right.
So that's a false statement.
It is.
And a very material one that led to the massive invasion of privacy and an investigation of first the candidate, then the president-elect, and the president of the United States. And it's based on a lie. So you know Washington really well. What stops the Trump Justice Department from bringing that case?
Well, first, there's a mentality of the Department of Justice. And about a year ago, I wrote a story about dozens of examples where FBI and DEA and ATF officials were found to have committed really gross violations. An FBI lawyer
I remember that.
Stole from the commissary at Quantico that we supply our Marines with. I mean, what more awful conduct can you have? And they didn't get prosecuted. Time and again, Comey doesn't get prosecuted for lying. McCabe doesn't get prosecuted for lying. Comey doesn't get prosecuted for leaking his memos. I do believe right now I am seeing activity consistent with building a case of conspiracy to defraud the United States in the FISA court. Now, whether they will get there and whether they will reverse this Department of Justice where everybody gets off in the Justice Department, gets prosecuted everywhere else, remains to be seen. But there's a lot of activity, witness interviews, evidence gathering, plea deal discussions that give me reason to believe that by Labor Day or around Labor Day, we might see some fruits of the John Durham investigation. But if we don't, we are on a high-speed, hypersonic jet to a banana republic in America.
And how do you see, you believe that Durham, and I have every reason to believe the same thing, is going to give a straight report with straight recommendations?
I do. I think it'll probably start with, I think the first sign may be a criminal information, a plea deal that tells the larger story of what his investigation found. I think right now he'd like to tell the story in court where he's most comfortable. He's not a political writer.
Right.
He's not going to do a Mueller report.
Right.
But I would be looking for that period just before, just after Labor Day for some life and activity and maybe the first news to come out of Durham. He deserves a lot of credit. This man has not leaked one iota. Imagine that compared to James Comey and Andrew McCabe. What a breath of fresh air.
Now, what about the Attorney General? So he's made some statements that sound like he's preparing us for they may not be indictments.
Yeah, I don't believe that yet. I don't believe that. I still think that.
But he has made those statements. What you're saying is that that's a strategy, possibly?
It could be. I mean, he said the most declarative thing he said is, I would expect by the end of summer to see the first real activity public in the Durham investigation. I haven't seen anything that makes me doubt the Attorney General. And let me say this, Attorney General Barr has taken this seriously, unlike the predecessors he had, and Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions. And he's run it to ground. And we got 3 special prosecutors, over 100 investigators and lawyers working on it. We're going to get the truth at some point very soon.
And are they ever going to investigate Biden, or is he going to get to keep the millions from the Ukraine, the millions from China, and then the money that his brother made in Iraq?
Yeah, I think
the whole family became millionaires.
Yeah, I think Ron Johnson is where it ends. I think we'll have to watch for the Ron Johnson report and hope we get the truth there. At least some political accountability. I don't expect any criminal.
By the time they do it, he'll probably be unprosecutable for not being able to participate in his own defense.
Yeah, that's right. And also the statute of limitations are passing.
I mean, he's babbling like.
Right.
Gosh almighty.
Well, thank you, sir.
Tell us the name of the book again.
Fallout. It's nuclear bribes, Russian spies, and the Washington lies.
It sounds. You can get it on Amazon and every place else right now.
Absolutely. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at the JTN shop, which is associated with Just the News. Thank you for giving it the attention today, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm looking forward to reading it tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John. Good luck.
Good to talk to you.
See you
Thank
very
you, Mayor.
soon. Okay. Well, I think that was a very interesting interview with John. John is a repository of information about the scandals and the corruption of the Obama administration, unlike anyone else. And I think this book will be one of several that he writes. And by the time he's finished, I think you're going to see that the Obama administration was probably the most corrupt administration in our history. This whole sellout of America to Russia is just matched by the sellout of America to China, which Biden did when he was supposed to be negotiating with China in order to get them to back off the islands that threatened Japan and South Korea, when he was supposed to get them to lower their totally confiscatory tariffs, when he was supposed to help bring them into more cooperation and not stealing our intellectual property. Those are all the missions he was given as the point man for Obama. He failed in every single one of them. Every single one of them got worse. And is it connected to the fact that his son got into a $1.5 billion deal with really the government of China, because the Bank of China is part of the government of China, and you didn't know it. You, the American people, didn't know your vice president was compromised, did you? And it was hidden. And they still continue to hide it. And they continue to answer no questions about it. And the horribly corrupt press doesn't even ask them a question about it. There's something very, very wrong. And the corruption here is not just in government, it's with the press. Because we count on the press to keep our public officials honest. And when they learn that they can get away with this the way Biden did for a whole lifetime, and the way Hillary and Bill Clinton did for a whole lifetime, they start stealing a lot of money. And they stole a lot of money. The Bidens, from the time he was in the Senate, was selling his office and pocketing the money and becoming millionaires. And Joe obviously knew all about it. After the first or second, he had to know about it. It was right in front of his face. I mean, unless he was senile, back then. And he was just stupid back then, not senile. And Obama watched Hillary basically sell her Secretary of State office for millions, if not hundreds of millions. So the real question is, why did Obama do nothing about this? It's quite obvious that Hillary was stealing. It was quite obvious that Biden was stealing. It was in the newspapers that his son had this compromising job, and he did nothing about it. So I think the really interesting thing that hasn't been explored yet, and that should be explored, is what did Obama know, and when did he know it, and what did he get out of it? Remember, he did come from Chicago, and he did have that very interesting transaction with the loan of the house, never covered properly, because Obama is a prince beyond scrutiny. And if that doesn't end, as John pointed out, we just can't have a fair criminal justice system in this country. There should not be different standards for Republicans and Democrats. Donald Trump has been hounded since the day he got into office. And Obama was allowed to have an administration that carried out some of the biggest scams and scandals in American history that have all been covered up, and with our enemies, Russia and China. That's disgraceful. And until it ends, we're going to have a very divided country. So let's hope it ends quickly. Well, thank you very much for watching. I think you're going to enjoy John's book. I highly recommend it, Fallout. I can tell you one thing. This man is very careful to make certain that everything he writes is truthful, because I've watched him with things that we had, and I thought they were truthful. I thought they were backed up, and he waited for more and more backup. So number one, you're going to get a good story, and number two, you're going to get an accurate one. And boy, that's hard to get out of the swamp nowadays, right? So thank you very much, and we'll see you again in a very short while for another edition of Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense.
Please subscribe to our backup channels on YouTube: Inglorious Patriots, Net4Truth USA2 Patriot Channel, and Ethernet Warriors. You can also catch us on BitChute.com/Net4Truth USA, remonetized.org/user/Inglorious-Patriots9, and drop.space/@Net4Truth USA. All the links are in the description. We fly so close to the target, we are on our 5th fighter jet. We will be relentless and persistent until the enemies of freedom are defeated. You can support this channel by using the links in the description, but for a $100 donation, I will personally send you a autographed hardcover special edition copy of Land of Childhood's Fears. Also, visit my bookstore at lulu.com/Net4Truth USA. If you are viewing this video on BitChute, you can use the links in the description to support us, or simply click the green $ dot on our video to support this channel. Thank you. Links are in the description section.